Hi, Asahi here. This is my recap for the anime failure frame, I Became the Strongest. If you dig my recaps, don't forget to subscribe and smash that notification bell. In a dark apartment in Japan, a boy is beaten by his own father who finds any excuse to hit the kid. This time he was furious because his son was taking too long to eat, and in his mind that was reason enough to hit him. Not fully understanding why he was being beaten, the child kept repeating an apology. Years later, these abuses still haunted Takao Mimori. On a school trip, he overhears Sogou Ayaka, the Class 2C representative, demanding the return of a book that Omayada had taken just to annoy her. During this, Mimori notices some classmates like Yasu observing with anger but keeping their heads down, while the Takao sisters act calmly, just like the apathetic teacher in charge of the trip, Zakurogi Tomatsu. Suddenly, Mimori decides to stand up to the bully but freezes when the guy puffs out his chest. That's when Takao steps in, and being a respected student makes Omayada return the girl's book. Even so, Omayada continues to bully the students, with Yasu being the next victim. The teacher then intervenes in a bizarre way, saying it would be a huge loss if Yasu took his own life, and even suggests the boy should do it when he's not the teacher if he chooses that path. Suddenly, without any noticeable reason, the students on the bus are transported to a world called Alien by the goddess Vicious. Without offering explanations, the entity reveals that the summoned humans are the hope to defeat the great demon empire. 200 years ago, the heroes of that time defeated this great evil, but the dark forces have returned once more. Because of this, Vicious needs the powers of the chosen ones again. The students around are confused, with some thinking it was a dream, others trying to process what the entity told them, and some believing they had died. Strangely, the teacher takes responsibility, confessing he doesn't know what's happening, but asks everyone to listen to what the goddess has to say. Apparently, he was eyeing the divine virtues of the mysterious woman's body. Meanwhile, Mimori analyzes the spacious stone-built room with fire baskets and soldiers wielding swords and spears. Lastly, a goddess with golden eyes. Thinking about this, he pinches his own cheek, doubting he was really taken to an alternate world. Among everyone, Takao seems the most composed and coldly asks if they were summoned to fight this so-called demon empire. When the goddess confirms he wants to know what happens if they refuse, Vicious calmly responds that they will be prevented from returning to their world. Takao questions how they could return, and she explains that the reverse summoning ritual requires a special element called the Demon King's essence, and there are two ways to obtain this essence. One is to obtain the heart of the Demon King, the very source of the Demon King's essence, and the other is to collect the essence that will come after defeating this great enemy and place it in the crystal necklace Vicious carries. In his usual manner, Omayada confronts the goddess, saying they have nothing to do with this empire, so Vicious kneels before the summoned ones and begs for their help, calling the students the heroes of salvation. Sogou argues that they are just ordinary humans and perhaps not the help the goddess expects, but the entity reveals that all of them have powers they never imagined, causing a tremendous commotion among everyone. Out of nowhere, a giant wolf is brought in along with a human. The wolf is then released and devours the man, instantly spreading blood all over the hall. Using a fireball, Vicious exterminates the beast. Faced with the facts, Takao realizes they have no choice but to accept what's on the table. Then the entity announces it's time to confront the hidden abilities within each of them, and each student steps up to a magic sphere that determines the summoned one's skill level. As everyone took their turns, the sphere showed average energy until it was Omayada's turn, who displayed above normal strength. However, Takao follows and breaks the evaluation crystal, making Vicious applaud and say he is part of the S class. Omayada, envious, asks what class he belongs to, and the goddess informs him he is ranked A. As always, the boy realizes he will never be on Takao's level. Next, Ayaka takes the test and also breaks another crystal. Besides, her Hijiri also joins the S class, something that had never happened before in this world, with so many summoned ones showing such high abilities. Finally, it's Mimori Tauka's turn, who expresses a purple light in the sphere, perhaps the weakest of all. Without giving any details, the goddess sends the next person for testing, leaving Mimori confused. He asks which class he belongs to, but is ignored, so he steps away, certain that he is just a background character in this whole process, just like in the world he came from. While these thoughts hammer in his mind, Mimori hears from the goddess that one of the summoned has reached the strength of the dark hero, the most powerful of all. With his hand on the crystal, Yasu knew his time had come. Next, the summoned ones learn to see their statuses, and Mimori is frustrated with the low numbers he displays, discovering he belongs to the E class. Each of the summoned possessed an exclusive ability, and he was capable of inflicting status conditions. Omayada, fed up with all the talking, tells the goddess to take a break. The teacher asks the student to speak respectfully to the entity, so the boy starts to show off by throwing in everyone's face that he is a class, unlike the teacher who is only D class. Next, Vicious announces a ritual and calls Mimori to participate, stating that he is the lowest ranked among all the summoned. She explains that in the past, the weakest always posed a hindrance to the higher class heroes, and thus it was decided that the best course of action would be to discard these individuals. However, since public disposal might cause an uprising among the others, she decides to give the lowest ranked hero a chance. Mimori will be left in a ruin, and if he survives, he will no longer be discarded. In this ruin, highly dangerous criminals will be lurking along with other heroes who were also cast aside. This terrible place is known as the Ruin of Discard. Desperate, Mimori argues that he possesses a unique ability and therefore shouldn't be considered so weak, but the goddess dismisses this completely. According to her, abilities that inflict conditions are worthless in this world because they generally only work against extremely weak enemies and last very briefly. In other words, Vicious disdainfully says that this is the ability of a loser. Outraged, Mimori remembers that it was she who brought him there only to be discarded, but Takao himself steps in to end the discussion. Tired of the weakling Mimori has shown himself to be. Humiliated by everyone, the weakest of the group feels a hand on his shoulder and realizes it's Yasu, someone he had helped a lot when he was bullied. However, like the others, Yasu joins the chorus and belittles him, putting him down for being of inferior rank. Then the process of teleporting the discarded hero begins, and as is tradition in Alien, each summoned individual receives a unique item. In Mimori's case, he is given a worn-out leather bag capable only of making a gem glow when mana is imbued into it. Ayaka tries to intervene and point out how wrong they are in treating the boy this way, but Vicious knocks her down with a punch to the stomach. On top of that, she orders everyone to look at the discarded hero and warns that this will be the fate of all who do not have the necessary capability to fulfill the objective, in other words, the losers. Fed up with the humiliation, Mimori unleashes one of his powers, paralysis, but nothing happens to the goddess, who is immune to such weak abilities due to a dissipating bubble that constantly surrounds her body. This bubble provides absolute protection against status spells. Given this, the goddess takes the opportunity to further humiliate the boy, loudly declaring that Mimori is a Class E loser. Just to test his above-average powers, Takao casts a dragon explosion on the hall's wall, clearly showing the contrast between himself and the discarded hero, who bows his head in the face of everything he is experiencing. Along with Takao, all the students despise their classmate who was classified as the weakest, while Vicious asks for Mimori's last words. Crying and speechless, the boy remembers when he was beaten by his father. On one of those days, his brother came to him and taught him that no matter how much we pretend to be harmless, that is never who we really are. In fact, this repressed way of being is the opposite of what we can express, and showing this personality trapped inside us is what will dictate our path. With this memory in mind, Mimori tells the goddess to go to hell and warns her to prepare herself in case he returns alive. With that, he is teleported to the Ruin of Discard and tries to open his status, but it's not possible due to the obscured vision of the place. Remembering what Vicious said about his return, the boy imbues mana into the accessory to generate a glow that he uses like a flashlight. Looking around, Mimori notices the dreadful cave he has been placed in, along with split skulls littering the ground. As if that wasn't enough, he is attacked by a huge monster lurking in the dark corners of that area, and his only option is to run for his life, aware that he could never face such a powerful being. While running, he feels the real fear of losing his life, so he dims the light from his bag and keeps fleeing as best he can while crying, neither happy nor sad, just scared. However, during During his escape, Mimori realizes that this feeling isn't really fear. Tripping over a stone along the way, he falls, and then gets up, reflecting that the feeling bothering him is frustration, the same frustration he felt before being thrown into this filthy place. Be that as it may, he knows it is his end. Without weapons, without status, without strong abilities, he cannot confront a creature of this size. Suffering from all the humiliation he endured before arriving there, Mimori uses paralysis on the monster. Seeing that it worked, he runs again while recalling what the goddess said about his status ability only working on low-level monsters, and a minotaur doesn't seem like a weak creature. After putting some distance between himself and the enemy, he encounters another, a bizarre bird exuding pure and genuine hostility. Crying once more, Mimori expresses his burning desire to stay alive, so he repeats the strategy that worked last time. Casting paralysis, he immobilizes the monster in front of him. Still terrified, he checks his status and notices that his mana is running out, so he will only be able to cast one poison. Doing so, he observes the ghastly bird bleeding from its eyes and every possible orifice. The minotaur, having freed itself from the paralysis status, returns to attack the boy, who without mana wonders if the cliché won't be someone saving him at the last moment. However, as he saw just a short time ago, none of those people seemed willing to help Takao Mimori, the discarded hero. Alone in this world, Mimori feels the same hatred he had for his father. When in the middle of a beating, he said he would kill that man. Back then, he realized he wasn't the protagonist of anything, and no one would help him when he needed it. So it was kill or be killed with no escape.